Welcome to the Cloudless Mind podcast about neuroscience and non-duality.
So welcome back to the Cloudless Mind podcast, and look forward to seeing what comes out of these mouths here today. Paul, how are you?
Good, I'm good. Yeah, what comes out of these mouths? That's actually what talking is about. You never know what you will say, and I think that makes life interesting. I mean, you don't even know what the next thought will be that pops up in your head, you know?
That actually is one of the things, you have all these people out there. It doesn't really matter what you think in terms of whether you think the world is determined, it's already pre-programmed, or if it's whatever. The fact is you just don't know, even if it is predetermined, you don't actually even know what the next words are going to come out of your mouth, much less how things are going to play out. So what does it really even matter anyway?
I'm not saying it's bad to create a strategy for your company, but understand that it will never go according to what you planned, because the way life unfolds itself, it's a mystery for everyone, We simply don't know. And I think that's a struggle for a lot of people that would like to have control. People like things to go in the way they want it to go. And once you just let it be, like the Beatles said, makes life way, way more easy.
Well, Paul, it really is my mission in my work. It's just like that. Like, there's no issue with making plans and goals and having strategies. But when you play the game at a higher level, when you interact with this dream state at a higher level, what you allow for the goals and strategies and whatever you want to do. But then you truly understand from a reality standpoint that this is just what that is. That's just what's happening in the moment. It has nothing to do with what will actually transpire. And the thought that you actually could have all this work out exactly the way you think is insane. You just simply have not looked at things. So what happens is, but people are oriented that way, and they're always thinking, they're gauging themselves against this, and the stress that comes from that is just enormous.
Another funny thing is that if you have success, that is due to billions of factors, and out of that combination of all these factors, something happened that you call success. And then people start to claim the success and then write books about the 7 steps to become successful as if they created it themselves. It's so funny. In the Netherlands, there is the Miss Holland, so the most beautiful girl of Holland. And she's married to the very successful songwriter in the Netherlands. And now she has written a book about how to become successful. But then Patrick, with whom I'm doing podcast with in Holland, he's a famous DJ. Yeah. He wrote this whole blog making fun of that girl, like, you poor little girl. You were accidentally born with this, the way you look. And because of the way you look, you could get that rich guy, that rich songwriter. And now you're writing a book to tell people how to become successful. This is like the absolute arrogance. But anyway, now the whole media is like struggling. Like, it's a whole battle in the Netherlands. I love it.
I have an idea. I just have an idea of a beautiful prescriptive book we could write.
Yeah.
The 1,000,000,005 steps to success.
Yeah.
So we're going to tell you the 1,000,000,005, but you got to follow these exact process. But it's only 1,000,000,005 steps.
Yeah.
So we'll get started on that after the podcast. How about that?
I love it. I love it to see people being so arrogant with their ideas. Like, for instance, a very specific thing that occurred yesterday. I was going to an event where my girlfriend, she's a violin player, she was doing a show.
Yeah.
And it was such a difference for me, because after the show, a girlfriend of her, who was also a violin player, this lady's totally not identified. So you can instantly connect with her, you can laugh with her, and it feels so relaxed when she was there. And then this older lady from the Lions Club, she was standing next to, and she starts to talk about, it was a wonderful show, and because I'm playing violin myself, and then she starts to brag, and it was like, oh, my stomach, man. I was like, go away, And this lady even has got this self-reflection, like, maybe I can realize that these people find me annoying just by nonverbal communication, and it became so awkward. And I'm like, so this is such a difference between someone who is not identified and relaxed and this lady who wants to show us that she is someone in the world, that she is important, and then tell her about her husband because he's rich and he has a lot of companies. And I'm like, I mean, isn't that the biggest struggle in companies too? Like this bragging.
Well, you can see. Yeah, well, you can see it, and it's an interesting dynamic for me to watch, and it's a constant thing for me. As I've mentioned in past podcasts, I work. My clients kind of are all on a continuum. So I kind of, I equate it to someone who's fully asleep at 1. And then at 10,
they get a rating.
That's right. Well, in my mind, I just have to get a sense of where I'm coming to them and where they're oriented, and then 10 they've completely disappeared and whatever. So typically though, you can feel it. And the way I do is I can feel where I am in the conversation. So it's simply within a couple of seconds, it becomes really clear to me how they are experiencing the world from a highly identified state or one that's a little bit more relaxed.
Yes.
It's one that has the ability to orient themselves around, knowing of their own projections and the like. And that simply comes from a feeling. And that's when you pointed that out, I think that people aren't awake of that enough. They're awake as they are. But yeah, that's how I start to gauge that. Is that accurate with you? It's exactly what you spoke about there yesterday.
I love people who don't take themselves so seriously and be vulnerable and authentic, because it just hurts, It takes away all my energy. And I think with coachings too, a big struggle for people is simply feeling insecure because you think you are a person in the world who has to become something.
Yeah. Well, bringing up coaching, I think it's interesting because you and I have sort of a different, and I think it's useful for the world to kind of see the different ways that we approach this thing of coaching, because, we've talked about this often on the podcast. Coaching to you does not occur like anything that you would ever want to do. And when we've been alone having a beer talking about it, it's like, from the way that you experience is like the story is so true you can't even be in the room with it, so to speak. You just see. Now I know this isn't you're not coming from a judging. It's just not inherently interesting to you. Is that accurate from a coaching perspective?
I don't. Please don't tell me your life story. It's not interesting to me.
People have actually asked me with that before when I come from this place, like, what are you doing as a coach? I mean, you don't tell anyone what to do. You don't strategize with anyone. You don't give them any practices. It's very seldom you'll give them some type of thing to go execute against, although that might, because for me, it's like, how can I ever know? It doesn't make sense for me to go put something on someone like I know something here. It's like my work is to help dismantle the clouds that allow their own intuition to be acted upon. And that's really my work. So that's how I'm oriented around it. I think that you and I have talked about this in the past too. It's, if I were the other way, it'd be exhausting. So the way I experience it, at least now, is it still really holds my interest to be in a conversation with someone who wants to be in that conversation. And typically what I do, for people who are interested, in how I actually even screen, I simply screen by giving them our little book. If they resonate, so I don't know if you may know this or not.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's clever.
Well, what I do is I say, look, you go read my book. I'll usually have one session with someone, and I'll say, go read my book that I wrote with Paul.
Yeah.
And here's my request. You can read it whenever. You can read it. It doesn't matter. But and by the way, that's actually useful for me to see how long it takes them to get to the reading, because those that are super interested and have a lot of energy around it, sometimes, I just did this 2 times last week. Both of them called back, had read the entire book within 24 hours. That gives me a sense of where they are.
Yeah.
The next thing that I do is I say, look, you have to call me within 30 minutes of the last word, or text me, whether you're in or out with me. Because at that point, their intuitive feeling about what is going to be present, and that's where I want them to answer from. Like, yes, this has interest, or no, you guys are absolutely insane. Either one's fine with me because I am insane. But but that's how I do my initial screening, and it's effective.
It's clever to see whether people resonate or not. I mean, when I'm doing my talks, I never know who's in the audience, so I have to find a balance between it. Sometimes people who know non-duality come up to me in the end like, I could see you were actually talking about that without mentioning it.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but it's our little secret here.
Hey, well, speaking of that, what do you think? Why do you think it is that that, speaking from this, let's just say using this term non-duality or something around this, why is it that you would avoid using that in the audience? Why would you avoid going directly at the pointing with the language?
Well, to me, if people come to my regular talks about non-duality, then they know beforehand what I'll be talking about. When a company hires me also for entertainment, also to talk about certain themes as change, collaboration, etc., it's my goal to give them a great show, to make them laugh and also inspire them a little. But people can only, if you say something that is approximately 5% above their capability, that's when they will grasp the insight. But if you go too deep and you go 20% above their capability, then their brain will reject it. It's searching a little about what can I say or what can't I say, but it's different for every audience. But normally in companies, I don't go too deep.
Right.
Because I don't want to shock them too much.
Well,
I'll do that in my regular talks.
I actually hadn't heard that before, but it makes so much sense in where people's capacity for hearing is. And so what I hear you saying is within the show is that's not the intention. The intention isn't to ever, the intention really is to kind of entertain, create a curiosity possibility, and give them new insights that could help them with their performance and brain and life. But the intention isn't to convince anyone around something like a non-duality, right? Yeah.
No, exactly. And also I've done talks with other non-duality teachers, and they would be totally radical and abstract. And then someone would ask a question about their pain or emotions, and they would be like totally nihilistic, like, well, there's no one experiencing pain.
Yeah.
And to them, it might sound cool, like, wow, look at how radical I am. But looking at it from a neuroscientific perspective, it makes no sense. They will still be more confused as they were before asking the question. So I would rather give an answer 5% above their capability in order to resonate with them and that it actually makes sense having asked the question.
Well, and that would also dovetail into why it makes so much sense why you've been so successful at what you do. What's happened is that people actually come away from an experience there that they really did learn something, right? And that they didn't have to grapple with it. And the way that the show is constructed actually makes it easier, effortless for the brain to experience this.
Yeah. Well, if you want to send out something rationally, you have to trigger the emotional brain. So normally speeches are boring because they will just talk rationally for 20 minutes and our brain thinks this is taking a lot of effort and it just rejects the message. But once you entertain people, once they laugh, once they have an emotion, that's when your message will be remembered.
Right.
So, I mean, you're doing the show too. The whole show is all based upon triggering emotions, and you laugh, sometimes you cry, sometimes you're amazed, and
I think that the operative word is it works, right? So we can go and philosophize around all different things. We can talk about it doesn't matter, but when it comes right down to it, does it work or not? Do you feel more relaxed, and are you walking lighter through the terrain of life or not? Do you have an effective presentation or a show that you can consistently count on that works? And I think that's in the end, that's a lot of what our conversation is about. And it's so counterintuitive because it sounds like we're actually trying to make something work. It's all actually working out beautifully on its own.
And regarding to my show, this was just try and error. I just started doing this 20 years ago, and by doing it so often, you just realize what works and what doesn't. But looking back at it, I realize now it's all about triggering emotions in many different ways. And I think that goes for everything, even if you have a date or a relationship or whatever. If you trigger each other's emotions, that's when it stays interesting.
You know, as you're talking, I'm just sort of thinking out loud right now in the depths of my work on a daily basis, how, you know, when you just mentioned about talking about something 5% over someone's, you know, it's like you're lifting a weight just a little bit heavier and you're getting stronger in there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good analogy.
Well, I was thinking, you know, I think I just intuitively do this. So intuitively understanding where someone is or where they are within their whole, you know, journey of wherever they're trying to apparently get. It's like this intuitive thing for me to release kind of what's needed at the time, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And it's actually really rare. I can only think of a couple of instances in my entire career where I've gone to like an 8 or a 9 with people on the scale of where they are.
Yeah.
But that came from just methodically getting up there bit by bit, 5% at a time. That's actually brilliant. I love that. I really, really appreciate that idea. Do you find that that 5% that you've taught people actually drags them to want more? Is that a natural thing that you experience like within your shows? Because you know when I give the show, there's like what's next? What's next? I want more. What's after this? Do you experience the same thing?
That's different with each person. Because some people are so passionate and they will be like, okay, give me more. And with other people, they get like 5% and they stay with that. But you can never tell, you know. So but I love it when people they listen to you and they're like, oh, this is more to it. I had the same thing. I've been curious ever since I was 11 years old about what's life about. So I started reading books and all philosophies and religions and spirituality stuff. But I was just passionate ever since I was young. But that's not my choice, obviously. That's simply the programming of this thing called Paul.
Yes.
So I think it's different for each person. It's different with each coaching, with each audience. And that's interesting.
And that really is. That, to me, is the not knowing, the seeing what's going to unfold and coming from that place is, to me, really what life's about these days. And that could change. That could definitely change.
If you send out information, just do it like 5% above. You know? Slow steps, slow integration.
Just you create slowly. Yeah. Well, look, another great conversation today. Thank you. Paul, why don't you this week tell people where they can find a little more of us? I think they're sick of hearing from me. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, you're always the marketing guy. No, let me do it. No. We would really appreciate if you buy a book. It's cloudlessmind.com. It's a great book, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it is, to me, one of the best books ever written. It's just, it might be right behind the Bible, but that's a big statement.
No, I think you're way too humble, man. I think this is an A level book. It's made.
Okay, well, I'll try to be a little bit less humble. Yes.
So anyway, it's on cloudlessmind.com, and just read it, and your life will change.
And 5% is all we're heading for. And we also have a YouTube channel which has everything. And by the way, Paul, I wanted to point this out. Is your movie that you made on our YouTube channel?
Yeah, with German subtitles, I think. If you just type in All About Nothing movie, that's when you see the movie with English subtitles.
Okay.
It's free on YouTube.
Anyone listening to this, just go watch it. He did an incredible job with that. It is worth it. And it basically just gives real-life examples of what we're talking about here. So anyway, all right, well, it's great to be with you again, Paul. I will be back. We will be back very shortly. Have a great one, everyone. Bye-bye.